What's up, guys? Thanks for tuning in to another week of site visit. We are headed into town right now. We're going to check in on our Beacon Hill project. Maybe I can't get in here at all. What's going on? Oh. Come on. There we go. All right, guys, we are at Project 174 here in Beacon Hill. The guys are off-site today. They're actually over in Cambridge, which is going to be our next stop. But you can see that they've gotten a lot of the interior trim done. We walked through some of the casing details last week. This is the Kukin Brothers molding. But what I wanted to talk about was the baseboard. And you can see here, we've talked about this a handful of times. These are invisible doors. These are made by Easy Jam, or they're Easy Jams, but made by Easy Concept. So this door is going to be completely flush when it's installed. And you can see the baseboard goes right across the opening here. Completely intentional. Let me walk you through what we're going to do. In here is going to be a finished floor. So I believe, and we went back and forth with this, is we're going to just actually do a painted bottom here and come up right behind this baseboard. And then we'll come up about an 1/8 inch above this baseboard with our door, so it can swing right over the top of that baseboard cap. So when this is closed, like I said, it gets rid of that, door next to a door next to a door. It's a utilitarian closet. I think we got Mike coming in. Yo! Yeah. All right, what I was saying. We talked about last week, door, and it's a utility closet. So at the end of the day, we don't want to see this. We want to use it for storage. This will all be wallpapered in, so you get that nice tight reveal all the way around, and the baseboard goes right across the bottom of it. Mike, the baseboard looks, the casing and the baseboard look killer in here. They're good profiles and good scale. So we'll keep walking. So pocket door here, and then it is loud in here without these windows. So a reminder, we actually sent these windows out to be restored. Which one of these, right? Yeah. Guys, if your electrician doesn't put these on, find a new electrician, because these protect the switches from stuff getting all over them. And if you know which switch to use, you don't actually have to take them off to turn the switches. You can just push through it. But we sent the windows out to be restored. A lot of you guys had asked why we couldn't just replace them with insulated glass. We could, if we went through this long, drawn-out process of trying to get approval. I shouldn't say we could. We could fight for it. And Mike's shaking his head behind Doug, saying, "No way."
It needs to be beyond repair in order to replace it.
Mike said it needs to be beyond repair in order for them to be replaced. Which some would argue that, hey, I can make a window beyond repair. Ultimately, we are in a historic neighborhood and a historic building facing Starrow Drive here in Beacon Hill. So there's a lot of stipulations, and a lot of people actually control what gets approved and what doesn't get approved. So in this building, we don't have the windows in, but you essentially will have a single glazed, single pane window on the facade. And on this side here, which faces Starrow Drive, which is a lot of traffic, you guys may be able to hear it, they actually have 2 sets of windows, and that's giving you that insulation value for sound. And then on top of all of these windows, we have the storm window, and that storm window essentially helps combat the need for thermal transfer. Not as well as obviously a piece of insulated glass, but does a fairly decent job. So that is ultimately why we decided to go that route. We didn't have the time, or we didn't want to, and we didn't want to invest the money, only to realize that, even if we went through all that, we probably weren't going to get approval. So we stuck with what we knew. We stuck with the original windows. They're being restored off site. So once they go in, they're going to look beautiful, completely restored, new hardware, everything dressed back up, and they'll look brand new. And you can see the guys have started to put in their window stools for these, getting all of those set. Really important for us is we want to make sure a lot of these are set at the same height. So the guys are going to make these reference points and be sure that everything is nice and level and continues throughout the space. back here, we have this little window area. This is actually going to be a window bench. Perfect opportunity to gain a little additional storage. That's going to be fabricated on site, and it will be painted with all of the trim. Up top here, you can see we have this odd ceiling detail, and that really came down to the way we wanted to push this ceiling up as high as possible, and that we could not put up any higher. And I don't know if I have a piece of crown molding kicking around here. It looks like I only have some long pieces. If you guys can use your imagination, I might get in trouble for this. I knew that wasn't gonna work. We have this crown molding going all the way around this entire space. Love it. So the guys actually, before I talk about this, the guys actually pre-cut everything for this unit in our shop to help, number one, delivery, so we're not bringing up long lengths. So it's even labeled kitchen crown, Kukin Brothers 317 profile, but everything's pre-cut into rough lengths, so we're dealing with less waste and maximizing our cut. So what I was getting at is, if I put this on the wall, that actually hangs lower than this. And we could have built this down, but what we wanted to do is we wanted to be able to get a full piece of casing back there without being cramped for space. So we decided to push this up as high as we could, push this up as high as we could, and then this will run continuous by this opening, and we'll actually box this out into a beam, so this will look as though it's a header. Mike and actually Tim were talking about a cool detail is possibly coming over in the corners and adding some sort of corbel detail. Is that right, Mike? Replaster it?
Yeah.
With a drop beam.
Build like a,
pretty much what I said, except plaster. But and I know we threw out the idea of possibly dropping some sort of curve in the corner, subtle enough where it's not encroaching on the space, but something that would tie into that curved entryway. So cool little detail here. It makes it work, but it is about the forethought all the way back here. Is we can't drop that whole ceiling because then you're going to cram that casing. And it's really important for us, through the years of doing this, is we don't want casing pushed up against the ceiling. That ends up being a caulk joint that can crack. That is just not. It's not a good detail. Same thing like we talked last week's site visit here, or 2 weeks ago, I'm sorry, where we don't want casing pushed up against the corner of the wall. You want that separation. You want the casing to be separated from the ceiling, be separated from the wall, and let that transition be intentional. And that's exactly what we're dealing with here. I'm gonna put this back before I get in trouble. And then last thing I wanted to just show you guys is the kitchen here. So we had talked about some of these details. I don't think this door was on at the time. Let me move some of this stuff around. So we had talked about this door, and originally it was going to be a door that opened up, but we were worried about kind of coming around the corner and having that door open and just kind of being in the way. So we ended up doing a bifold door. So it has the sauce hinges in the middle and moves over to the side. And otherwise, that door, if it was a single door, it would be way out here, and that's far too large. So the bifold door is becoming a more common detail for us. And then the countertop will actually run all the way through this nice little appliance garage. Small space in here. So below the counter, we have a refrigerator and freezer drawers. So there's no actually fridge freezer column here. And Ken and I were actually talking about this in the shop the other day. For small spaces, this makes a tremendous amount of sense. And it's a more creative way to think. So otherwise, you'd have this ultra tall cabinet in an otherwise small space that just might look overly cramped. So it sounds like Mike's got a meeting with the interior designer today. And we're gonna leave before that meeting, and we're gonna head over to Cambridge, where Tim and Cooper are on site. But this place is looking great, and shortly after we get the rest of this trim installed, we're gonna go right into paint, and then this whole place gets wallpapered. So that will make a big dramatic difference. I'm excited to see that. So let's head over to Cambridge and see how they're doing. Sweet. Thank you. All right, what's up, guys? We are in our Project 170 Cambridge Loft project. Last time we were here, we were talking about some radiant panels we had stacked up. And you can see what we're standing on is masonite. So the masonite is actually protecting the newly installed radiant panels as well as the radiant tubing. This is a Vega product. You can come over here and kind of see what we're dealing with. It is a 7/16 plywood panel that actually has an aluminum backing to it. I'll grab a piece in a second to show you. And then the tubing runs throughout. So we're using radiant heat as a primary heat source in here. But if you guys remember from the previous episode, we also have 3 air handlers in the space to supplement heating, but primarily handle the cooling. And we can take a look at some of those being installed in just a few minutes. But I want to show you guys kind of what we're dealing with as far as the radiant. These panels are in. Over there, they're starting to install the panels. But what is really exciting is this steel. So obviously we have the existing structural steel that is completely exposed in the space. It's a big architectural element, and we went back and forth. We have the staircase out back, which is that wood frame staircase. Out here is a huge centerpiece. We'll actually include a little rendering in the video, Doug, so we can show what this is going to look like. But this is the start of our staircase going up to our primary suite. And so Rich over at Costa Fabrication fabricated this C-channel and got this installed, buried the post in the wall. We have this plate detail here. What's nice about what we're seeing here is this is bolted to our radiant panel. This is our subfloor. Essentially, if we didn't have radiant, this would be where our plywood would be. This is completely below our finished floor elevation. So our finished floor will actually come over and cap all of this structural steel, allowing all of this to be buried below and only having just this C-channel sitting on the floor for really nice architectural detail. Going up the stair, we're actually going to have wood treads with metal risers. So it's going to be a mix of materials, and then the bottom side of it is actually going to be completely plastered. Now, one of the nice details that we're going to be working on with the fabrication of the wood, as well as the electrician, is each of these steps will have an individual LED to light up this staircase. Did we get rid of the LEDs, Tim? And we're doing the wall. So just leave that. So I'm wrong. You can absolutely correct me. So let me back up, because I originally, to my defense, we were originally going to do LEDs under every step. We got rid of that, and you can see on the wall here, the electrician and the guys have prepped for essentially wall washing down onto the steps, similar to the detail out back there. Now, as you work your way up, you're going to have a landing, and that will turn into the wood floor, and we're going to do a steel handrail with stainless steel cable on this. Why don't we go out back and we'll show you some of the radiant panels that are being installed now. You can kind of see what that detail looks like. So if you guys remember, we started with a stego mat on the floor for our radon control. And actually, here's a panel itself. So you can see that plywood core and that aluminum backing. And what that aluminum backing is essentially doing is when you click, look at that, you can actually see that detail, how that tubing clips in, the way that panel is actually rabbited. So when that tubing clips in, it's going to hold in there nice and tight. But what I was saying is the aluminum is actually going to help radiate the heat up rather than being transferred down. A really important detail. So this actually gets glued and completely screwed throughout the entire space. Back here is being installed now. So what I was saying is we had the stego first, and then we have our dry core R panel, so it has that insulating value behind it, and then these panels get screwed on top of it. And then on top of this, we'll actually have a European white oak, which will be a full spread glue and staple on top of this. Guys, I'm back here. This is one of the air handlers that will service this back unit as well as the office upstairs. And we talked about this last week, is how we had to reduce the framing member size in order for us to get that air handler up. I had asked these guys when I walked in is how tight that is, and he said it's the tightest. So you can see just how much room is above that, and our ceiling is going to be essentially right up tight below it. And one important detail we're doing on all of these units is that there'll be on-rubber isolators to help prevent any vibration transmission into the floor above, and just when that unit is running in general. Up here, you can actually see above us, that's unit number 2. So similar here, that unit's going to do what will be our sitting room, which is where that skylight is up top. Very similar size unit. It's a small pancake style Mitsubishi. That does there, and also helps on this side of the common space. And then our third unit was above the our third unit is actually above the elevator, which services the bedroom as well as the bathroom. I had posted last week another rendering, actually, looking into the bathroom. Doug, actually, why don't we go up there, because I'd love to kind of walk through what that detail looks like live. So I'm actually going to pull this up so we can talk about it. So we had this whole project rendered, and one of the reasons that we did that is because we want people to be able to understand what the final product looks like, because there's a lot of details in this space in order for us to get right. So let me pull up, if I can get this to load here. Here we go. So this right here is the primary bathroom, and I'm going to show you what this view, where that view is from. If I'm standing essentially right here, that green vanity is right where that plumbing is, and that square framing niche is where that mirror is. When you look up, you can see this skylight, that skylight in the picture right here. Down below, if you looked, you saw that angled, you'll see this angled wall that is way high up on this wall that is basically 2 stories tall. And what that's doing is it's essentially capturing that skylight within the bathroom, but also through that window, which pours down over the kitchen and the dining area. But third, which isn't in this rendering, is this window. So essentially what's happening is that skylight is feeding the bedroom through the window above the bathroom itself, and the window looking over the kitchen dining. So having a rendering like this gives us the real visual of what this space is going to look like in the final result. And a few of you guys had commented on this this wood bench in the shower, which I don't know where that came from. We probably just dumped that in there with the rendering, but it is something that's pretty cool. So I'd love to entertain building that for the client. And for those who had asked how we're draining it, curbless shower. So that floor is actually pitched back towards the niche. So we're always pitching it away from the entry of the glass so you can get that smooth transition. All right, so that's a quick update for what's going on here. We have a lot of cool things going on. One thing that we're gonna actually be doing here is once we're done with rough, completely done, we're gonna remove all this fiberglass insulation. This is not permanent. You guys asked before, this is existing. We leave it in here to reduce the amount of sound transmitting through the walls of the neighboring units while we're under construction. This will all be removed, and we'll replace it with a rock wool mineral wool product for sound. Basically our acoustical detailing on how we're going to prevent the sound from transmitting in and out once we get to that point in the project. But what I'm getting at is all of this will come out. We'll clean this whole space. We're going to actually work with a 3D scanner and have this whole place 3D scanned, and we'll walk you through that in a future episode. But the reason that we're going to do that is so we can come back and always reference where things are in the wall, all the way down to a really, really accurate ability to actually measure on screen exactly where things are. So if we ever had to locate a pipe, or if we wanted to hang something on the wall, we'd be able to locate those studs based on that 3D scan. So stay tuned for that in a future episode. For now, we're gonna hop back in the truck, head back over to the shop. The guys have made awesome progress on those stairs in the shop, and we also built that dresser for Project 174 that we were just at. So head over there and check on those guys. Only speaking to me, I don't know the market down there, but based on kind of what we're building up here, you know, for modern, we're traditionally gonna be north square foot. That is probably the 5th out-of-state client that we've had this week, and it's directly related to a lot of these site visit videos, which is super cool. It's, you know, whether we consult on some of these projects out of state or we in fact build. I had one that was on the West Coast. Unfortunately, the budget didn't line up, but it's still exciting to talk about the possibility of building in more places than just here. We're gonna wrap up the day here in the shop. Before I do, Ken doesn't know I'm doing this, but he just got another shipment of the Hive Pro books. If you guys want one, it's hivenotebook.com. Tell them I sent you. All right, but seriously, we just left our Cambridge project, and the entryway cabinet is going to be this engineered veneer, and this is actually one of the pieces here. Ian's actually taking the time to lay out some of the cuts and how this is going to work, because of course anything we do in here is going to be grain matched. We want to make sure that we're laying everything out and preparing for it. But it's this really cool gray tone, and this will be the entry cabinet as well as the sitting room cabinet. But some really cool details that we'll show in a future episode. Probably you'll see a lot in the Revealed series, but I want to show you that. And then another thing that we're doing on this project is, Ian just moved it on me, but that's okay. We went back and forth. You know, traditionally we're using our walnut interiors for our cabinetry, and maple is something that we don't use a lot of. Well, one of the things that the client wanted was a really light interior, and the conversation started as white, painted, or a laminate finish, and we ended up going back to maple, but we did make one slight change. We went with a quarter sawn maple. It's a little bit of a premium. It gives it a little nicer look on the inside for us that we can get behind, so that's the route we went. Gives him the light interior, and the reason he went light is he likes the contrast, so when he looks into the cabinet, you know, dust or dirt, or if you have a pepper shaker and pepper kernels land on the shelf, you don't get lost in them. I talked about the Beacon Hill dresser. Here's the box for it. Ian just let me know he actually dropped everything off at finish, got everything done, wrapped up. So this will be the box that goes in, and we have hanging storage on the left here, which will be essentially, it will look like 4 drawers like here. So you have 4 drawers here. So that's for, you know, dresser drawers. On this side, it will actually look like it's 4 drawers, but it will have a bifold hinge similar to the kitchen that will open up and slide to the side, and that gives you extra hanging space, which they were looking for in the bedroom here. And then above, we have this really cool metal and glass shelving system that we're gonna be installing. And then let's go down to the other end of the shop. Nick, Pat, and Ian are working on the staircase for Project 169 in Southie. And they're basically wrapped up with the staircase. Everything's been pre-fit. You can actually see this is gonna be our curve section at the bottom of the winders here. And that's, you know, that was actually taken, Ian built this awesome table behind us. If you look over there, and he built it very similar where he took a bunch of pieces, put an angle on them, glued it all together. We did the same thing here. We're smoothing out the inside, and we'll use that for our radius at the top and bottom. Again, Nick designed this stair, and I'm actually not gonna share a lot about this in this site visit, because if you stay tuned till tomorrow, we'll actually release another episode of the Revealed series, and they're gonna walk you through the entire process of this stair and how they got to this point. And then I think next week we'll be on site and we'll actually crane this thing in place, and you'll get to see that. So as always, guys, we appreciate you hanging out and staying tuned to our site visit as well as our Revealed series. Make sure you tune in next week for another episode. Turn on notifications, subscribe, and if there's any point in this show that you really liked or you want us to dig in more, make sure you add the timestamp below. As always, we appreciate you. See you next week.